Wife cheats, hard in bed. My gut-wrenching discovery, her bitch lies, and my epic journey from betrayal to unbreakable freedom. Reddit confession. Alright Reddit, I'm shattered, completely and utterly broken, and honestly, I don't even know why I'm typing this out other than maybe hoping someone, anyone, can make sense of this nightmare. My wife, Lisa, and I have been together for nearly 12 years, married for 8. We built a life, bought a house, talked about kids, the whole 9 yards. Or so I thought. Looking back now, the signs were probably there, insidious little whispers I brushed off as stress or my own paranoia. But now they're screaming. It started subtly, maybe 6 months ago. She got a new job, a promotion she said, which meant more hours, more client dinners, more late-night calls. At first, I was supportive, proud even. She'd come home exhausted, sometimes smelling faintly of an unfamiliar cologne, which she'd attribute to her male colleagues or just the general office environment. I'd nod, kiss her, tell her she was working too hard. Our intimacy dwindled to almost nothing. When I tried to initiate, she'd either have a headache or be too tired, or snap at me for only wanting one thing. The sex we did have became perfunctory, almost forced, and she'd often be looking at her phone under the covers, replying to urgent work emails right after we were done. My gut twisted, but I kept pushing it down, telling myself I was being insecure, that a strong woman like Lisa deserved her own success and space. Then came the new phone, a work phone she insisted was essential. But it was always glued to her hand, locked tight, and she'd take it everywhere, even to the bathroom. If I so much as glanced at it, her demeanor would change instantly, from indifferent to fiercely protective. It's company property, Mark, confidential stuff. You know how strict they are. I tried to believe her, I really did. But the casual touch, the affectionate gestures, the shared laughter we used to have, they all evaporated, replaced by a brittle politeness, or worse, outright irritation from her side. She became a stranger, living in our house, sharing our bed, but her mind and heart were clearly elsewhere. I felt like I was losing my mind, walking on eggshells, constantly trying to guess what mood she'd be in or what new excuse she'd have for another late night. The calm, understanding Lisa I married was gone, replaced by this bitchy, secretive person who seemed to actively resent my very presence. This constant emotional whiplash was slowly chipping away at my soul, making me question everything about our past, our present, and any future I thought we had. I started to feel like a detective in my own home, a role I never wanted. Her stories began to unravel, tiny threads at first. A client dinner that supposedly ended at 10 p.m., but I'd see her car pulling into the driveway at midnight, sometimes later. Once, she claimed she was at a conference call with someone in London, but I happened to be up for a glass of water and distinctly heard her laughing, a light, girlish laugh I hadn't heard from her in ages, coming from the garage where she'd gone to take the call in private. When she came back inside, she was instantly stony-faced, telling me the call went fine and she was stressed. I let it go again, because what else could I do? Accuse her based on a laugh? It felt pathetic. Then came the credit card statement. It arrived while she was at work, another late one, naturally. I wasn't snooping, honest. It was just mixed in with some bills I was paying. But one item jumped out at me. A charge for a boutique hotel, the Sapphire Suites, on the other side of town. Not a business hotel, not one you'd book for a client. It was known for its discreet, high-end rooms. The date was 2 weeks prior, the same night she'd told me she was working late on a critical presentation and would just crash on the office couch to save time. My blood ran cold. The explanation she'd given me had been so convincing, even a little heroic, dedicated to her new role. Now, it felt like a dagger. That same evening, she came home later than ever. I was trying to act normal, but my hands were shaking. She walked in, tossed her keys on the counter, and sighed dramatically. God, I'm so exhausted, Mark. This job is killing me. She didn't even look at me. She went straight to the fridge, grabbed a sparkling water, and headed to the bedroom. That's when I smelled it. A distinct, sweet perfume, not hers, clinging to her hair and clothes. And there, on her neck, just above her collarbone, was a faint, red mark. Not a hickey, not exactly, but like a bruise or a fresh scratch. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew. In that moment, With the hotel charge still searing my vision and the scent of another woman's perfume suffocating me, I just knew. There was no turning back from this. It was all a lie. A sudden, visceral wave of nausea washed over me, threatening to pull me under. The air in our house turned thick, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. The hotel charge, the scratch, the perfume, it all coalesced into a horrifying certainty. I knew, but I needed proof, something concrete that she couldn't lie her way out of. My mind raced, buzzing with a desperate energy. I thought about checking her phone, but I knew it was useless. It was locked and she never let it out of her sight. But then I remembered the work laptop. She usually left it open on the kitchen counter when she finally crashed, too tired to bother closing it properly. That night, as soon as I heard her even breathing from the bedroom, I crept out. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure it would wake her. The laptop was there, just as I'd hoped. It wasn't locked. My fingers trembled as I navigated to her browser history, then her emails. Nothing immediately incriminating. I scrolled faster and faster, feeling like a thief in my own life. Then I found it. A hidden folder, cleverly disguised as a project files folder. Inside, a trove of messages, not work-related at all. They were WhatsApp chats, screenshots, and photos. My breath hitched. The messages were from a man named Alex, someone I'd vaguely heard her mention as a colleague. But these weren't colleague chats. They were explicit, filled with pet names, longing, and incredibly graphic details about their encounters. And then, the photos. My stomach dropped to my feet. Photos of her, my wife, with him. In a hotel room. In bed. Her hair disheveled. A look of pure, unadulterated pleasure on her face that she hadn't shown me in years. And him. He was a younger guy, muscular, grinning like he'd won the lottery. There were photos of them kissing, naked, and then a video. A short, grainy video taken by him, of her in bed with him. Hard. My vision blurred. It was undeniable. It was brutal. It was right there, staring me in the face. I felt a cold, crushing weight descend upon me. The air was sucked out of the room. My legs buckled and I had to lean against the counter, gasping. It wasn't just a fling, not a casual mistake. This was a full-blown, passionate affair, and it had been going on for months, maybe even longer than I'd realized. The late nights, the client dinners, the exhaustion, all of it was a meticulously crafted lie. My world, my entire reality, shattered into a million pieces right there on the kitchen floor. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was a complete stranger, a deceitful monster. And I, the dumbass, had been blind, utterly blind. The shame, the anger, the excruciating pain, it was all too much. I wanted to scream, to break something, to just disappear. But I couldn't. I had to face this. I had to face her. I don't know how I made it through the rest of the night. I stared at those images, those vile, sickening words, until the first hint of dawn. Every single memory of our 12 years together was tainted, twisted into a cruel joke. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal. When Lisa finally stirred and came out of the bedroom, yawning and stretching, I was already sitting at the kitchen table, the laptop still open, the evidence glaring. She walked in, looking like she'd just woken from a peaceful sleep. "Morning, honey," she chirped, reaching for the coffee maker. She didn't even notice the laptop at first, or the way I was sitting, stiff and cold. Then she did. Her eyes flickered to the screen, then to my face. The chirp died in her throat. Her expression went from groggy to utterly frozen in a split second. The color drained from her face. What are you doing?" she stammered, her voice thin. I didn't answer. I just pointed a shaking finger at the screen, at the explicit chat open for her to see, at the picture of her and Alex laughing naked. "Don't honey me, Lisa," I said, my voice barely a whisper, raw with a pain so deep it physically hurt. "Explain this. Explain the sapphire sweets. Explain Alex. Explain why you've been lying to me for months and screwing someone else in my bed, in our life." She stared at the screen, then at me. For a moment, she was utterly speechless, a sight I thought I'd never see. Then, the anger, her familiar bitchy anger, flared in her eyes. "You went through my laptop. How dare you? That's an invasion of privacy, Mark," she shrieked, suddenly defensive. "Invasion of privacy?" I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You're sleeping with another man, Lisa. You've been having an affair. You think I give a damn about your privacy when you've shredded our marriage into confetti? She tried to snatch the laptop, but I pulled it away. It's not what you think, she cried, but her voice was laced with panic. It's just a fling, a mistake. It meant nothing. He's just a colleague. We got drunk. It got out of hand. A fling? Got drunk for months on end? I retorted, my voice rising. There are dates, Lisa. Weeks apart. Hotels. Explicit messages. Videos, for Christ's sake. Don't you dare insult my intelligence. Don't you dare lie to my face again. She started to cry, suddenly, dramatically. Big, theatrical sobs. I'm so sorry, Mark. I messed up. I swear it's over. He pressured me. He said if I didn't, he'd ruin my career. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. She was a terrible actress. Her eyes were darting around, looking for an escape, a new angle to work. The sudden tears felt manipulative, a performance. I just stared at her, utterly disgusted. She thought I was that stupid. She thought I'd buy that tired old lie. The woman I married was gone. This was a stranger, a liar, a betrayer. And in that moment, all I felt was a cold, hard resolve beginning to form in the pit of my stomach. Her tears turned into a torrent of excuses, each one more transparent than the last. He threatened me, Mark. He said he'd tell everyone at work I was incompetent if I didn't cooperate. I was trapped. It was just physical, it wasn't emotional. You know I love you. It was a moment of weakness, I swear. She reached for my hand, but I recoiled as if she were poisonous. The thought of her cooperating with him, the graphic details from the messages, the pure joy on her face in those pictures, it all made her performance utterly sickening. Trapped? I sneered, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. With photos of you laughing, enjoying yourself? With messages where you initiated things? Don't insult my intelligence, Lisa. You weren't trapped. You were participating. Enthusiastically, by the looks of it. I pointed to a particularly explicit message where she had practically begged him to meet her. Her face twisted. The tears instantly dried up, replaced by that venomous, bitchy look. Oh, so now you're judging me, Mr. Perfect? You've been so distant lately, Mark. Always busy with your own stuff. I felt neglected. Alone. He just paid attention to me. That's all. Neglected. I exploded, standing up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. I've been working my ass off to pay for this house, for our future, while you've been out screwing some younger guy. And you call that neglect? You think that justifies destroying everything we built? You think that gives you a pass to lie and cheat and then blame me for it? It's not my fault you didn't keep things exciting, she snapped back, her voice now dangerously calm, cold. He made me feel alive. He actually wanted me. You just wanted to sit on the couch and watch TV. The audacity, the sheer gall of her, to twist the narrative, to blame me for her sordid affair, was breathtaking. My head started to pound. This wasn't the distraught, apologetic wife I might have secretly hoped for, clinging to some sliver of the woman I married. This was a ruthless, self-serving liar, and she was doubling down. So I'm boring, am I? I whispered, my voice thick with a rage I barely recognized. And he's exciting because he takes you to cheap hotels and sends you filthy messages? Is that what alive means to you, Lisa? Cheating? She just stared at me, her eyes hard, devoid of any remorse. Maybe it is, Mark. Maybe you just don't understand. It was a punch to the gut, the final, fatal blow. In that moment, the last vestiges of hope, the desperate yearning for things to go back to how they were, vanished. There was no us left. She had not only betrayed me physically, but emotionally, financially, and in every conceivable way. The person standing before me was a stranger, and a cruel one at that. The thought of trying to reconcile, to rebuild anything with her, felt like trying to plant flowers in scorched earth. My mind, which had been a whirlwind of pain and confusion, suddenly cleared with a cold, terrifying clarity. The marriage was over. It had been over for a long time, I just hadn't realized it. The conversation, if you could even call it that, devolved into a screaming match. She kept deflecting, twisting, blaming. Every accusation I leveled, she'd flip it back on me, dredging up old arguments, minor grievances, inflating them into monumental failings on my part. You never listened to me. You're always so focused on work. You let yourself go. It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to justify her actions, to mitigate the enormity of her betrayal by painting me as the villain. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. The shock was slowly giving way to a white-hot anger, a searing indignation that solidified my resolve. Save it, Lisa. I cut her off, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremors running through my body. I'm done. I'm done listening to your lies, your excuses, your pathetic attempts to make me responsible for your infidelity. I walked over to the coat rack, grabbed my car keys, and started putting on my shoes. She watched me, her face a mixture of confusion and dawning panic. Where are you going? Mark, don't be dramatic. We can talk about this. We can fix this. Her voice, for the first time, held a note of genuine fear, no longer just feigned remorse. The bitchy defiance began to crack. There's nothing to fix, Lisa. You broke it. You shattered it into so many pieces, it's irreparable, I said, not looking at her. I need to get out of here. I need to breathe. And when I come back, you better have your bags packed. You're leaving. Her eyes widened. Leaving? You're kicking me out? After everything? Where am I supposed to go? The fear in her voice was palpable now, her face pale. The reality of the situation was starting to hit her, not just the emotional damage, but the practical consequences for her. That's your problem, isn't it? I retorted, my voice devoid of emotion. You figured out how to find a hotel room with Alex. I'm sure you can figure out how to find one for yourself. Or maybe Alex can put you up. He seems very accommodating. The barb landed. Her face contorted in a mix of fury and despair. I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from her, away from the lies, away from the stench of betrayal that permeated every corner of our home. As I drove, a sudden, blinding rainstorm erupted, mirroring the chaos inside me. The windshield wipers struggled against the deluge, and for a moment, I considered just driving until I ran out of road, out of gas, out of tears. The pain was immense, a physical ache in my chest, but beneath it, a tiny, flickering spark of self-preservation had ignited. This wasn't my fault. I wasn't the one who had destroyed everything, and I wouldn't let her drag me down with her. The thought was liberating, even amidst the crushing grief. I had to protect myself. I had to find a way to survive this. I drove aimlessly for hours, the rain drumming a chaotic rhythm on the roof of my car. My phone buzzed incessantly, texts and calls from Lisa, a desperate barrage of apologies, threats, and more pathetic attempts to shift blame. I ignored them all. My mind was a vortex of emotions, fury, disbelief, profound sadness, and a crushing sense of loss. 12 years. Gone. Reduced to a series of lies and cheap hotel rooms. Eventually, the rain subsided, and the sun began to peek through the clouds. I found myself pulling into the parking lot of a secluded hiking trail, a place Lisa and I used to go early in our relationship. The irony was not lost on me. I got out of the car, needing to move, needing to push my body as hard as my mind was being pushed. I hiked for what felt like forever, the fresh air slowly, incrementally, pushing back against the suffocating weight in my chest. As I walked, I began to process everything, not just the raw pain, but the intricate web of deception. The new phone, the work, trips, the sudden disinterest in our sex life, the bitchy dismissals of my attempts at affection. It wasn't just a single mistake. It was a deliberate, calculated campaign of lies. She hadn't just cheated. She had meticulously crafted a false reality around me, making me feel like I was crazy for even suspecting anything. The thought made my anger flare anew. How could someone I loved and trusted so deeply be capable of such sustained cruelty? My phone buzzed again. It was my best friend, Dave. I hadn't told anyone yet. The shame had been too great. But now, alone on this trail, the isolation was becoming too much. I needed to talk. I answered, my voice hoarse. Hey, Dave. Mark? Dude, are you okay? Lisa just called me, screaming, saying you kicked her out. What the hell is going on? Dave sounded genuinely concerned and a little confused. She cheated on me, Dave. I blurted out, the words tumbling out like a dam breaking. Hard. With some guy from her work. I found everything on her laptop. Pictures, videos, messages, everything. My voice cracked on the last word, and I felt the tears welling up again. There was a long silence on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. Holy shit, Mark. I don't even know what to say. Are you serious? Dead serious. I told her to get out. I I can't look at her right now. I can't be in the same house as her. Dave's voice was instantly firm, supportive. All right, man. Listen to me. You did the right thing. Come to my place. My guest room is always open. You shouldn't be alone right now. Don't go back to that house tonight. The offer was a lifeline. I felt a tiny bit of the suffocating weight lift. Thanks, Dave. Seriously, I'm on my way. The decision felt sudden, but it was instinctual. I knew I couldn't face her again, not yet. Not while I was still reeling, still trying to put one foot in front of the other. The path ahead was unclear, shrouded in a fog of pain and uncertainty, but at least I wasn't walking it completely alone anymore. I still had my friends, I still had myself. And that, I realized, was going to have to be enough. For now, staying at Dave's was a godsend. His wife, Sarah, was amazing. She just listened, didn't offer unsolicited advice, and made sure I had food and a quiet place to crash. The first few days were a blur of numb exhaustion, punctuated by sudden, gut-wrenching waves of grief and anger. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, images of Lisa and Alex flashing behind my eyelids. Every memory of her, every shared joke, every intimate moment was now tainted. It was like living in a house that had been ransacked, familiar, but utterly violated and broken. Lisa continued her assault via text and phone calls, an escalating mix of remorse, blame, and increasingly desperate pleas. Mark, please. I'm staying with my sister. It's cramped. I have no privacy. Please let me come home. I miss you. Then, an hour later, this is all your fault for being so cold. You drove me to him. And then, if you don't let me back, I'm going to tell everyone at work what you did. I'll ruin your reputation. The threats just cemented my resolve. She wasn't just a cheat. She was a manipulative monster. I finally responded to one of her texts. Stop contacting me, Lisa. All communication will go through lawyers from now on. You need to find a new place to live. The response was immediate and furious, but I blocked her number and email right after sending it. The silence, after weeks of her constant noise and deception, was deafening, but also incredibly liberating. It was the first step in reclaiming my peace. The practicalities began to sink in. Our house, our finances, our shared life. It all had to be disentangled. It was overwhelming. Dave, bless him, helped me find a good divorce lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, different Sarah, who specialized in these kinds of cases. Meeting her felt like putting on a suit of armor. She listened calmly, took notes, and assured me that with the evidence I had, Lisa wouldn't have a leg to stand on if she tried to fight. The laptop, the messages, the photos, it was all ironclad. Your wife has committed adultery, Mark. That's clear. We'll proceed with an uncontested divorce if possible, but be prepared for her to try and leverage anything she can to get what she wants. She sounds like a very self-serving individual. Her words, though professional, echoed my own growing realization. Lisa wasn't just a woman who made a mistake. She was someone who was fundamentally dishonest and selfish. The weight of it all was still immense, but for the first time, I felt a faint glimmer of control. I wasn't just reacting to her actions anymore. I was taking proactive steps. It wasn't about revenge. It was about self-preservation. It was about severing the toxic cord that bound me to her and finally beginning the agonizing process of healing. This wasn't the end of my pain, not by a long shot, but it was the start of my journey away from it. And that, I knew, was everything. The legal process was like pulling teeth, even with a great lawyer. Lisa, true to form, tried every trick in the book. She initially refused to leave the house permanently, claiming emotional distress and demanding I pay for a luxury apartment for her. My lawyer swiftly shut that down, reminding her that I had ample evidence of her infidelity and that her refusal to cooperate would only make things worse for her in court. She eventually, begrudgingly, moved out, though not without leaving a few surprises in the house, like dead flowers stuffed under the couch and an overflowing trash can in the kitchen. Petty, vindictive stuff, but I just sighed and cleaned it up, numb to her childish attempts to hurt me. Dealing with her directly for splitting assets was a nightmare. She acted like a victim, constantly crying poor, claiming she deserved more because she had sacrificed her career for me, a blatant lie, considering she'd just gotten a promotion that led to the affair. She even tried to argue that the work laptop I'd used to find the evidence was hers, and I had no right to it. My lawyer just laughed and told her attorney that the evidence was already logged and wouldn't be going anywhere. One particularly frustrating afternoon, during a mediation session with our lawyers present, Lisa dramatically recounted her version of events. Mark was cold, distant, never appreciated me. Alex just paid me attention, made me feel seen. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness, and Mark is just being vindictive. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue, glancing at me for a reaction. I just stared blankly at her. It was surreal, listening to her weave this pathetic narrative. My lawyer, seeing my stoicism, calmly interjected. Ms. Lisa, while we understand your feelings, Mr. Mark has provided undeniable evidence of a sustained, consensual affair, including explicit communications and photographic evidence. Your attempts to portray yourself as a victim or to shift blame will not hold up in court. We are here to discuss a fair division of assets, not to debate the morality of your choices. Lisa's face flushed crimson. The mask of sorrow dissolved into pure fury. You just want to ruin my life, don't you, Mark? You're enjoying this. She shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. No, Lisa, I said, my voice low and steady, surprising even myself. You ruined your own life. I'm just cleaning up the mess you made. The meeting ended shortly after that, unproductive. But for me, it was a turning point. Hearing her lies, seeing her performance, and then speaking my truth, calmly and clearly, felt incredibly empowering. The fear and sadness were still there, but they were now mixed with a growing sense of detachment. She was just a person, a deeply flawed and dishonest one, and she no longer had the power to dictate my emotions. The chains were slowly but surely coming off. It was a long road, but I was finally walking it, one step at a time. The legal battles dragged on for what felt like an eternity, but slowly, painstakingly, the divorce was finalized. It wasn't completely amicable, but my lawyer managed to ensure I kept the house and a fair share of the assets, largely thanks to the mountain of evidence I had against Lisa. She tried to fight for alimony, but the judge, after reviewing the evidence, found her claims of victimhood and lost career opportunities to be baseless and denied her request. It was a small victory, but a significant one. The final decree came through, a cold, official piece of paper that marked the end of an era and the end of U.S. The days after the divorce felt strangely empty. The intense emotional roller coaster had finally slowed, leaving a quiet void. Dave and Sarah were still incredibly supportive, inviting me for dinners, making sure I wasn't just holed up in the now-too-quiet house. But even with their comfort, the silence was deafening. The house, once filled with our imagined future, now echoed with ghosts. Her things were gone, packed away by a moving company, leaving behind faint outlines on the walls where pictures used to hang, and a lingering sense of absence. I started to reflect, truly reflect, on everything. The initial shock had been a sledgehammer, followed by the corrosive acid of betrayal. Then came the anger, the bitter rage that fueled me through the confrontation and the initial legal steps. But beneath it all, there was a profound sadness. Not just for the loss of Lisa, but for the loss of the future I thought we had, the dreams we'd built. It was a grieving process, akin to a death, but even more complex because the person who died was still walking around, breathing, and still trying to cause trouble. One evening, sitting in the living room, the space now undeniably mine, I felt a strange calm descend. The hatred for Lisa hadn't entirely vanished, but it had mellowed into a weary disgust. The intense emotional pain was receding, replaced by a dull ache that I knew would take time to heal. I realized that my focus had shifted from her and her actions to myself. What did I need? What did I want from life now? The answers weren't immediately clear, but for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't the end of my story. It was a devastating chapter, a brutal betrayal, but it was a chapter, not the whole book. I had survived. I was still standing, and I was learning, slowly, how to breathe again without the suffocating weight of her lies. This journey, as agonizing as it had been, was forcing me to rediscover who I was, independent of her. And that, I realized, was a powerful, if painful, gift. Rebuilding my life wasn't a sudden, dramatic phoenix from the ashes moment. It was slow, excruciatingly incremental. The house still felt too big, too quiet. I spent evenings reorganizing, repainting, anything to make it feel less like a crime scene and more like a home. I got rid of everything that reminded me of her, even small trinkets, wanting a clean slate. Each purged item felt like shedding a layer of the past, painful but necessary. I also started rediscovering hobbies I'd let slide. I dusted off my old guitar, hesitantly strumming chords that felt rusty and unfamiliar. I joined a local hiking club, forcing myself to interact with new people, to engage in conversations that didn't revolve around betrayal and divorce. It was awkward at first, a raw wound covered by a flimsy bandage, but with each new interaction, each shared laugh, the bandage thickened. One of the hardest parts was facing the questions from mutual acquaintances. "How's Lisa?" they'd ask innocently. The explanations were always difficult, sometimes met with shock, sometimes with pity. I learned to give a brief, factual account. "We're divorcing. She was unfaithful." And then quickly changed the subject. I wasn't going to badmouth her unnecessarily, but I wasn't going to protect her reputation either. The truth was the truth. My emotional journey continued to evolve. The intense anger slowly transmuted into a quiet resentment, then eventually, into a profound sense of indifference. I realized I wasn't angry at Lisa anymore. I was angry at the situation, at the wasted years, at the pain she caused. But her? She just became a distant, unpleasant memory. It was freeing, in a way. No longer was she able to provoke such intense emotions in me. I also started therapy. Dave suggested it, and it was one of the best decisions I made. Having a neutral third party to talk to, someone who could help me navigate the complex grief and trauma, was invaluable. My therapist helped me understand that what I experienced was a form of betrayal trauma, and that my reactions, the shock, the anger, the feeling of being crazy, were completely normal. She helped me reframe my perspective, focusing on my resilience and strength instead of dwelling on her transgressions. During one session, I vividly described the moment I saw the evidence on the laptop, the sheer brutality of it all. It was like she reached into my chest, ripped out my heart, and then stomped on it. I told my therapist, tears welling up. "And how did you respond, Mark?" she asked gently. I confronted her. I took steps to protect myself. I initiated the divorce. "Exactly," she said, nodding. "You didn't just lie down and accept it. You fought for yourself. That's strength, Mark. That's resilience." Her words resonated deeply. I hadn't just been a victim. I had fought, and I had won my freedom. That thought, more than anything, became a cornerstone of my healing. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving after the devastation. And that was a future I was finally, cautiously, starting to look forward to. And hey, while you're thinking about your own resilience, why not hit that like button and subscribe to the channel? It really helps. As the months turned into a year, the acute pain began to fade, replaced by a dull ache that surfaced only occasionally. The house finally felt like mine again, filled with my own choices, my own quiet rhythm. I adopted a stray dog, a goofy golden retriever mix named Gus, whose boundless energy and unconditional affection became an unexpected source of joy. He filled some of the silence, and his need for walks forced me out of the house, reconnecting me with the world around me. Dating was complicated. I tried a few times, went on some coffee dates, but the trust issues were monumental. Every new woman felt like a potential threat, every kind gesture possibly a prelude to deception. I'd find myself scrutinizing their phone habits, their explanations for being late, haunted by the ghost of Lisa's lies. It was exhausting and often unfair to the women I was meeting. I realized I needed more time, more healing, before I could truly open myself up to someone new. My therapist encouraged me to be patient with myself, reminding me that rebuilding trust takes time, especially after such a profound betrayal. My career, which had taken a back seat during the emotional turmoil, started to flourish again. I poured my renewed energy into my work, found new projects, and even took on some leadership roles. The sense of accomplishment was a welcome distraction and a powerful reminder that I was capable, competent, and could build something meaningful entirely on my own terms. I also started to mend some relationships that had been strained during my marriage. Lisa had subtly alienated me from some friends and family, subtly criticizing them, making it difficult for me to spend time with them without her judgment. Now, I reconnected with old college buddies, spent more time with my sister and her family. Their unwavering support, their belief in me, was a vital part of my recovery. One afternoon, I was out for a walk with Gus, enjoying the sunshine, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. It was Alex, Lisa's former lover. "Mark? Is that you? This is Alex. I know you probably hate me, and I deserve it, but I needed to talk to you." His voice sounded hesitant, almost scared. My stomach clenched. "What do you want, Alex?" I said, my voice cold. The indifference I thought I'd achieved evaporated, replaced by a surge of anger. "Look, I know what I did was wrong. Unforgivable. And I'm not looking for forgiveness. But Lisa, she's been trying to get back with me. She's been harassing me, showing up at my apartment, calling my work. She even tried to tell my boss I was harassing her." He sounded genuinely distressed. "She's unstable, Mark. Seriously. She's been threatening to tell people at my work about our affair if I don't get back with her. I wanted to warn you, in case she tries anything with you again. And to say, I'm really sorry, man. I messed up badly. I never meant for things to go this far." A chilling realization dawned on me. Lisa hadn't just tried to ruin my life. She was continuing her pattern of manipulation and destruction, moving on to Alex. Her behavior hadn't changed. It was a stark reminder of the bullet I had dodged, the toxic individual I had finally freed myself from. The anger at Alex was still there, a simmering resentment, but it was overshadowed by a grim satisfaction. She was reaping what she sowed, and I was finally, truly, out of her reach. The call from Alex, though unsettling, served as a stark, final confirmation of who Lisa truly was. It wasn't just a mistake or a moment of weakness as she'd claimed. It was a deep-seated pattern of manipulation and selfishness. It reinforced that my decision to cut ties completely was not just necessary, but a matter of self-preservation. I briefly considered reporting her harassment of Alex, but ultimately decided against it. My involvement would only give her another opportunity to insert herself into my life, and I was done. Completely. The final step in reclaiming my emotional independence came unexpectedly. About 18 months after the divorce, I was at a cafe, waiting for a friend. Lisa walked in. I hadn't seen her in person since the mediation. She looked different. Harder, perhaps, or just older. Her eyes scanned the room, and then they landed on me. For a split second, I felt the familiar jolt of panic, the old wounds throbbing. But then, something shifted. I just didn't care. She started to walk towards me, a tentative, almost fragile expression on her face. "Mark, is that really you?" My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I simply looked at her calmly. "Hello, Lisa." She sat down at the table, uninvited. "How are you? You look good. Different." She hesitated, then, I wanted to apologize again. Truly. For everything. I know it's probably too late, but I really am so sorry for the pain I caused you. For a moment, I considered launching into a tirade, reminding her of the depths of her betrayal. But then I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the woman I hated, nor the woman I loved, but a hollowed-out version of the person she used to be. The fire was gone from her eyes, replaced by a weary resignation. It felt like an old, faded photograph. "I heard about what happened with Alex," I said, surprising myself with the directness. Her face flinched. "He's a jerk. He lied to me. He used me." The old blame shifting was still there, a faint echo. "No, Lisa," I interrupted gently. "He didn't use you. You used him, just like you used me. You make choices, and those choices have consequences. You are where you are because of your own actions, not because of mine or Alex's." She looked down, finally, truly defeated. I guess you're right." It was the closest thing to an admission of fault I had ever heard from her. I stood up. My friend was waving from the entrance. "I wish you peace, Lisa," I said truthfully. "But I'm not that person anymore. And this isn't my fight." And with that, I walked away. No drama, no yelling, no recriminations. Just a quiet, dignified departure. The encounter didn't bring closure in a dramatic sense, but it cemented a profound realization. I was free. Free from the anger, free from the blame, free from the weight of her betrayal. The heavy chains that had bound me to her and her actions were finally, irrevocably broken. I was walking into my own future, unburdened. And that, I knew, was the greatest triumph of all. The encounter with Lisa at the cafe was a strange, almost anticlimactic moment of clarity. It wasn't the fiery confrontation I might have once dreamed of, nor was it a tearful reconciliation. It was simply an ending, a quiet, definitive closing of a chapter. I walked away feeling light, unburdened by the weight of needing an apology, needing her to understand, needing anything from her. That realization that her actions and her remorse, or lack thereof, no longer had any power over my emotional state was incredibly liberating. Life continued to unfold. I deepened my friendships, especially with Dave and Sarah, who had become like family. They celebrated my small victories and provided a listening ear when I had moments of doubt or lingering sadness. I continued therapy, exploring not just the trauma of the betrayal, but also old patterns in myself that might have contributed to my tolerance of Lisa's subtle manipulations early in our relationship. It was a journey of self-discovery that was both challenging and incredibly rewarding. I started dating again, cautiously, with a much clearer understanding of my boundaries and what I truly needed in a partner. It wasn't about finding someone to fix me or to replace Lisa, but about building a new, healthy connection based on honesty, respect, and mutual trust. It was a slow process, but I was patient. I learned to enjoy my own company, to cherish my independence, and to not rush into anything out of loneliness. Looking back, the emotional impact of the betrayal was immense. It was a complete overhaul of my perception of love, trust, and even my own self-worth. There were days, especially in the beginning, when I felt like a shell of a person, hollowed out and devoid of joy. But with time, therapy, and the unwavering support of my friends, I slowly pieced myself back together, not into the same person I was before, but into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. I learned the hard way that trust is earned, and that true love requires unwavering honesty, not just superficial affection. The decision to move forward was not about forgiveness for Lisa, but about forgiveness for myself, for being blind, for allowing myself to be manipulated, for holding on to a broken dream for too long. It was about choosing my own peace and happiness over clinging to bitterness or revenge. I chose to rebuild, not out of spite, but out of a deep-seated desire for a fulfilling life, a life that was authentic and true to me. If I had any advice for others going through a similar nightmare, it would be this: trust your gut. Those insidious whispers of doubt, they're usually telling you something important. Don't ignore them. Don't let someone else gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. Gather your evidence, protect yourself legally and emotionally, and don't be afraid to walk away. It will be the hardest thing you ever do, but holding on to something toxic will slowly kill your spirit. Seek support from friends, family, or a therapist. You are not alone, and you can get through it. It might not feel like it now, but there's a life waiting for you on the other side of the pain, a life that is honest, authentic, and truly yours. And on that note, please remember to subscribe and like the channel if you found this story helpful or even just cathartic. Every bit helps support these stories and the community. Thanks for listening, Reddit. It means more than you know. The process of healing continued, marked by small victories and occasional setbacks. Some days, a song on the radio or a passing scent would trigger a memory, and a wave of the old pain would wash over me. But these waves became less frequent, less intense, and I learned to ride them out, acknowledging the grief without letting it consume me. I was getting better at self-compassion, understanding that healing wasn't a linear path, but a meandering journey with its own rhythm. I sold the house about 2 years after the divorce was finalized. It was a big decision, one I debated for a long time. While I had made it my own again, there were still too many ghosts, too many shadows of a past that could never be. Moving into a smaller, cozier place felt like a fresh start, truly severing the last physical ties to the marriage. Gus, of course, came with me, and we quickly made the new apartment our own, filled with new furniture, new art, and a palpable sense of peace. My therapist helped me understand the stages of grief and how they applied to the loss of a relationship, especially one tainted by betrayal. It wasn't just losing a partner, it was losing a future, an identity, and a profound sense of security. Accepting that grief was part of the process, rather than a sign of weakness, was crucial. It allowed me to feel the emotions without judgment, to let them pass through me, and to eventually release them. I also found a passion for helping others. The experience had given me a unique perspective on betrayal and recovery, and I started volunteering at a local support group for individuals going through divorce or relationship trauma. Sharing my story, listening to others, and offering a glimmer of hope to those in the initial throes of pain became incredibly fulfilling. It transformed my own trauma into a source of strength and empathy. Your story can be a beacon for others, Mark, my therapist had said. It shows that even after the deepest cuts, healing is possible and a new life can be built. It wasn't about completely forgetting the past, but integrating it into who I was now. The betrayal was a part of my story, a scar that reminded me of my resilience, but it no longer defined me. It had taught me invaluable lessons about red flags, about self-worth, and about the importance of authentic connection. The path was long and arduous, filled with moments where I felt completely lost and overwhelmed. But through it all, I learned to rely on myself, to trust my own judgment again, and to truly value genuine relationships. The man who sat shattered at his kitchen table, discovering his wife's brutal betrayal, had transformed. He was still Mark, but a Mark who was stronger, wiser, and unequivocally free. He was ready for whatever the future held, with an open heart, but a carefully guarded one. He had learned his lessons, and he was finally, truly, moving on.